Well, I can tell you right now, there is a lot of breaking news in the case of Zoe Rosenberg. The prosecution's case has begun. And right now, 12 jurors, 7 men, and 5 women are in the process of deciding the fate of a young woman who took these four chickens that I'm about to show you and rescued them. And now these chickens are healthy and living their best lives. But at the time they were rescued, the defendant says they were very, very, very ill. This is what Zoe Rosenberg, the 23-year-old defendant, had to say. She said, essentially, prosecutors will tell a story of a radical criminal who steals animals from hardworking businesses. We, meaning the defense, will tell the stories of 4 little chickens who faced unimaginable pain. Their names are Poppy, Ivy, Aster, and Azalea. And now you're going to hear the very latest, what the defendant herself has said, and then we will analyze it with our panel on the other side. This is what Zoe Rosenberg is saying publicly on her Instagram feed about the prosecution's opening statement and the defense's opening statement. Listen carefully, and we will analyze on the other side.
Zoe Rosenberg is a criminal activist. In the prosecutor's opening statement, they talked a lot about activism, and they tried to establish that, there's good activism and legal activism, and then there's other activism. And Zoe Rosenberg is a criminal activist. They tried to paint a picture that this is not a political prosecution, that this is not about my beliefs, not about my philosophies, and yet they spent about half of their opening statements talking about my beliefs and philosophies and trying to paint them as radical and unreasonable. They tried to paint Petaluma Poultry as a lawful business and paint it as unreasonable that I thought that it was possible that they were not a lawful business because there are agencies that audit Petaluma Poultry. During our opening statement, for the first time, the jury was able to see hidden camera footage of the slaughter line at Petaluma Poultry, see birds flailing as they're improperly stunned. They saw photos of birds who had been scalded alive in the scalding tank at the slaughterhouse, and I really hope that the jury was starting to consider all of the ways that Petaluma Poultry is leaving animals to suffer. The jury also started to hear the stories of Poppy, Ivy, Aster, and Azalea, the 4 chickens who I rescued from the slaughterhouse.
And there, once again, are those 4 chickens. We're going to go straight out to our reporter on the scene, Matthew Zierbull, outside court. Matthew, you were there for opening statements yesterday. I was really shocked that the defense was able to get as much in as they did about the allegations of animal cruelty.
I was too, Jane. I think Zoe had a very good measure of both the prosecution and the defense's statements. The prosecution is trying to frame her as very fringe. I thought it was surprising how much they could talk about that as well. But I was especially surprised that the defense had quite a big framing of talking about what open rescue is, what the legal theory is behind it, and all of the reasoning that Zoe used when deciding to do the open rescue that she did. It really is central to the case, and so it makes sense that the defense is able to use it. But it's good to see it all in court, all laid out, and I think very well as well.
Let me say this, and then we're going to go to Shaka Smith, our attorney, as well as our trial watchers, Annie Abram and Michael Fujimori, who've been watching this case from the start. What I thought was truly shocking in a good way is that according to people who are sending transcripts and notes from inside the court, in its opening statement, the defense argued Zoe did not go into her rescue brashly, but rather relied on extensive investigation from another animal investigator. And the defense attorney, Kevin Little, was able to describe the chicken killing process and show a large pile of dead chickens, explaining that this is a condemnation pile where chickens not eligible to be sold for food end up. And Zoe, as you heard, said that the footage of the slaughter line and the chickens shackled upside down were actually shown to the jury. I thought all of that was going to be kept out. Tell us what was shown. What did you see?
Yeah, so first he went through the idea of high sickness at the facility, which Raven's investigation had uncovered. I believe that's the investigator he was referencing there, although he didn't use her name specifically. She'll be testifying later, though, so we'll get into that. And then he went through all the reasons why a chicken who is sick might not be going through the slaughter process correctly. As he described it, sick chickens might be less, able to breathe, less able to do their regular activities. And so as they go through the stun bath, they might not be knocked out by the chemicals in there. And then because of that, they might be awake and moving around during the slaughter process itself as the blade that's supposed to slit their necks used very nearly that wording.
The footage? Did they see the footage that we were basically told that because they eliminated the theft charge and they were really trying to narrow this down, similar to what they did in Wayne Shung's trial, where hardly any evidence of animal cruelty was shown? What I'm hearing from you and from Zoe is that they showed footage that is similar to, and correct me if I'm wrong, take a look at this footage and tell me if this is in any way similar. This is footage that was put out by Direct Action Everywhere. And this is what they say is footage from inside Petaluma poultry facilities. And we'll let this play out. Can you compare and contrast what we're seeing here now with what the jury got to see?
So the jury got to see just a couple stills from the slaughter line itself of the undercover footage that was taken there. So they weren't able to see any of the actual production facilities that we're seeing right now on screen, but they were able to see hear descriptions of the birds running through at hundreds of birds per minute. And they were able to see a couple of the footages of the boiling tank, I believe of the moment of slaughter as well. So it's not everything that we'd love to be able to show to the jury, but it is a lot that is very specific to the points that we're allowed to make in the case.
Right here, I don't know if you could see it, but it's a picture of the chickens shackled upside down, going through some kind of process, and then there's a couple of chickens that are flapping their wings. That's what the jury saw?
Yeah, I need to wait just one moment because there's a couple of people walking by that I don't recognize. There can't be any chance that I say anything to a juror. Okay.
Very good. And we want to make sure that we don't do anything like that will in any way, shape, or form, skew this case or get anybody into trouble. So that's really good that you're doing that. But the video of the chickens upside down, it's kind of red video that you see the chickens shackled upside down, and then there's a couple of chickens that are clearly not out and they're kind of flapping their wings. Did the jury see some of that?
As far as I recall, the jury only saw 3 still videos, all of them of the slaughter, 2 of them of the slaughter process itself while they're hung upside down, and then 1 of the pile of condemned birds.
When you say still video, are you talking about a still photo?
Yeah, still framed from the video.
Got it. Thank you, Matthew. Great update. All right, I want to go right out to Shaka Smith. You're our attorney who's helping us understand all this. Are you a little surprised, as I am or not, that right here from the get-go, the jury is seeing at least some still images of what motivated Zoe to go in there?
Yeah, I'm not surprised. So I think once the necessity defense was knocked out, I think the prevailing view was that a lot of that stuff would be kept out. But you still have the felony conspiracy charge. And for the conspiracy charge, you have to have a guilty mind. You have to have the mens rea, the criminal intent to commit an unlawful act. And so I think Zoe's defense is that she didn't believe it was an unlawful act to enter into the Petaluma facility. And I think she even had some sort of legal justification by a lawyer that had said, this is why it's all right to do so. So they're able to attack that based on what she knew, what she saw, and what was aware of. And that was the reason she entered. And so she didn't have the guilty mind to commit the conspiracy.
Well, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. And Ellen Dent, you've been following this from the beginning. We were, you can never predict what's going to happen at a trial. So while we're getting little bits and pieces, we were all kind of saying, well, they're not going to see very much, similar to Wayne Shung's trial where he was convicted and evidence of animal cruelty was almost completely left out. They seem to be squeezing it in here. What do you think the impact of a few still frames of animals hanging upside down, a dead pile of chickens would have on the jury?
Well, I think video would be much more impactful, but I'm glad to hear that these still images, from some of this footage have been shared with the jury. And I'm actually surprised that they're doing that, based on, the past trial with Wayne Chung. But I believe that the jury probably has never seen imagery like this before, just like most of the public and I, and most of the people here had never seen before deciding, to go vegan or, convert to veganism. And so I'm glad that they're seeing it. I hope that they make the connection, with the individuals they're seeing in those photos.
So let's get to our trial watchers. And we're lucky to have two individuals who have been watching this trial from the beginning. And we know that because they've been commenting. So we reached out at this crucial juncture. Opening statements was yesterday. Today, the prosecution statement, the prosecution's argument, the prosecution's case is truly underway. So let's start with Annie Abram. Annie, what are your thoughts as you hear that, wow, it was an unexpectedly strong open for the defense?
I'm excited for the fact that the judge allowed these gruesome realities to be seen, because one of the biggest problem with the animal agriculture is to keep everything in secret. I would have loved it if they allowed the videos to be seen, obviously. However, still photos of snapshots of the video is still hopeful. However, I would love for the defense to also remind throughout, because we know, in fact, people remember things from the beginning and the end, and everything in the middle could get blurry. So as we get towards the end, I hope it's still renewed these memories in people's minds that these are not happy chickens. These animals were suffering horrendously. They had gashes. We get a paper cut and we panic from the pain. Imagine the suffering these animals go through, and people would make that connection. And also the fact that Zoe is a rescue hero. She went with the intent of rescuing sick and dying animals. That was the only intent, as Shaka said, and intention should be a big factor in this.
We have one person wanting to know how many seconds were the still photos up. I think that's a very good question, and I want to go back to Matthew on that, because if you put up something for 1 second, people don't have a chance to absorb it. But if somebody's watching it for a minute, they can really look at it and go, oi, that doesn't look so good. Matthew?
Yeah, I was taking notes and I don't remember the exact timing. I guess maybe about a minute. I think we will see these again, possibly even with
Well, you broke up there for a second, but the key point was that we will possibly see these again. Michael Fujimori, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Jane, I think it's a very good sign for the defense, for Zoe, that they did allow these images to be shown in court, because I remember very clearly during Wayne's trial, they did not, and he was eventually acquitted. So
No, he was convicted. In that last case, he was convicted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, he's gone through so many trials, I kind of got him mixed up. But anyway, yeah, no, I think this is a good sign, because I think people's hearts will be touched by these pictures. They probably have dogs or cats at home, and if they can make that connection that these animals that are suffering in the slaughterhouse are the same as their dogs and cats at home, then I think it's really, I'm cautiously optimistic about the outcome. But I don't want to, I don't want to say too much right now, because it's still in the early stages. But I think that going forward, that it's definitely a positive and something that we haven't seen before in previous trials.
Let me ask you this question, Shaka. I've covered many trials. I used to work in local news, then at Core TV, then at CNN Headline News. And we did panel discussions very much like this about big trials. I'll never forget in the O.J. Simpson trial, the jurors actually did a tour of O.J. Simpson's house. And they went through the house. And I'm wondering, why couldn't we, in a case like this, take these jurors into the slaughterhouse? More than anything else in the world, I think that would actually show them what exactly goes on inside a slaughterhouse.
I think the judge might find that too prejudicial. It outweighs the probative value, just because it would be so jarring, and he's going to have to weigh that against whether or not he feels the defense has enough evidence to prove their case, at least when it comes to the felony conspiracy charge. And so I think they probably wouldn't do something like that here in this case, because they think it would be too prejudicial for the jury. But I do think that the judges allowed a lot of things to come in because they want to show that a reasonable person could believe that they had a legal right to go in and openly rescue these chickens.
Excellent point. I think legally, it's very important that we think outside the box because the entire system is pretty much designed to co-sign the status quo. And Matthew, I want to go back to you on that because one of the reasons they didn't allow Raven Deerbrook to testify is that they said, and I'm going to show a picture of Raven, they said that Raven didn't have the degrees and didn't have the associations and didn't have the credentials when she is a person who has made a lot of waves and gotten into the biggest newspapers in the world for going into a pig gas chamber here in Los Angeles. She snuck in there and almost died in the process. She was seconds away from getting trapped inside to actually videotape what happens to what happens to pigs inside the slaughterhouse gas chambers where there was no cameras ever. And the story that was put out by industry is that they just go to sleep, and her video showed them screaming and writhing in pain over the course of a slow death. So if anybody, in my opinion, has the credentials to talk about slaughterhouses, it's her. But she doesn't have the credentials that the establishment, which is basically invested in preserving the status quo, has. So if they brought some other expert in who had the credentials that society says makes you an expert, they would tell a completely different story than Raven would. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's definitely unfortunate. I would have liked to be able to have her be able to talk about the documents. I believe that she's still going to be able to testify, just not as an expert witness. Are we having audio issues?
Well, no, I mean, you're kind of breaking up, but say what you had to say.
Oh yeah, it's definitely sad. I believe she'll be able to testify, just not as an expert witness to the USDA documents that she was able to take pictures of. It's definitely not the outcome that is helpful to our side, but I think that there is a logic to the judge's ruling here, that whether or not she's able to interpret all the documents and be totally confident about them might be a question, unfortunately.
Well, I want to talk about a couple of other things. One, the incredible publicity this case is getting. I will tell you that there's a saying in the animal rights community, you have to get naked or get arrested to get any kind of mainstream media coverage. And in this case, Zoe Rosenberg has to face up to a half a decade behind bars to get mainstream media coverage. But look at these stories just today. I snapped this a couple of minutes before we started our live coverage. And by the way, for those just joining, we're going to be live every day of this trial. Unchained TV has made that commitment. But it's great when we have mainstream coverage. So San Francisco Chronicle, a very big newspaper, Berkeley grads, chicken rescue trial begins. The Mercury News, activists are criminal, jury hears opening arguments in East Bay woman's trial. Activists are criminal, juries. See, what's so good about this, and here, Yahoo News, Berkeley grad's chicken rescue trial begins. That is a step forward, Ellen, because the mainstream media, not just us, we're not mainstream media. Sadly, I wish we were, but we're independent media. But the mainstream media is now calling it a chicken rescue trial.
Yeah, and I mean, that's exactly what she did. She rescued those chickens. When they see the footage of how they look coming off of those trucks, I hope that the jury really, sees that these chickens were in dire need of being rescued. And it's so good to see these positive headlines in the news, because so many times animal rights activists are portrayed as being radical, acting erratically, or, like they're insane or something, but that is simply not the case here. She was very calm. She went up to the truck. She got those chickens off. I know that you'll show this footage again of these chickens and the state that they were in, and she checked them and put them, contained them, and got them to where they needed to be to get medical attention. So you can see she's not running up there. She's not ripping out crates. It's a very slow, calculated process that she had to do this, and very much so. I believe she knew that she was doing the right thing for these chickens, and so hopefully the jury will see this footage and they will agree that this was a very positive action that she took.
We've got some comments here. Viewer Nilofar Ashgarian, a subpar excuse for not allowing Raven Deerbook to testify, that she doesn't have the stamp on the butt. Okay. And Tiffany Brunelli, who's sometimes a panelist here, says, how did opening statements go? So I want to just get a quick answer from you, Matthew. Who do you think won? And you don't have to play it any which way or put your thumb on the scale, because this is the very opening of the case. But how would you say each side did?
It's really hard because I think both sides sold their side very well. The prosecution's case is that you should ignore all of the why and focus only on the what. And the defense's case is you should ignore all of the what and focus on the why. And I think the people are probably both convinced pretty well about the what and the why. And the question will be the balance of what the jury ultimately pays attention to. And I just can't call that. I will say the jury seemed very interested during our opening. And the prosecution's first witness that they were able to call was a very, in my opinion, dull police testimony. And so we've got that in our favor, but I don't know for sure.
Well, I think I appreciate your honesty. And what I want to say is, and we'll just remove until she gets back. What I want to say is the fact that this has gotten this kind of mainstream media attention, even though she has to risk going behind bars for 5 years, is already a victory. And Shaka, I know you have to leave in a little bit, but can you give me your thoughts on that? You're an attorney, but you're also, a person who is a social media influencer.
Yeah, I'll say following the opening statements, I think both sides won in some way. We have to remember, once they got rid of the necessity defense, it almost guarantees or comes close to guaranteeing a guilty verdict on the trespass charge. So in that way, the prosecution is setting up the trespass. I think they have the officer up there that was there that night to kind of lay out those elements. It's the felony conspiracy charge that we really want to win here on. And I think the defense did a really great job setting that up, showing Zoe as an individual who relied on other legal opinions and who did what she was supposed to do. She reported this to the authorities. The authorities had no interest. So I think they did that very well in showing that she's a 23-year-old young girl who's just trying to do better in the world. So I think they have both sides set up their really strong arguments, and the hope is that we do not get that felony conspiracy charge to go through. And of course, seeing all the press helps me really be optimistic for the appeal. And maybe that necessity charge gets to be, that necessity defense gets to come in for the appeal. And of course, the jury, and of course, the sentencing. You hopefully, on the misdemeanor charge, the judge, if it gets to that point, will sentence leniently based on the press coverage, based on some of these things that they've allowed in court to show that, the Petaluma facility was not just a bad facility because it's a slaughterhouse, but even amongst slaughterhouses, they were doing poorly.
Well, I want to thank you for taking the time. You may be able to see that he's in a vehicle. He has an important appointment, but he stopped. Shaka Smith, attorney, social media influencer. Thank you so much for joining our coverage. It's always good to have an attorney to analyze what's going on. Now, getting back to this whole idea that Raven Deerbrook, who was the one who took photos of the condemnation records, is not going to be allowed to testify as an expert witness. I believe she's going to be a witness, but just not an expert, which kind of limits what she can talk about. Let's talk about the actual experts and authority figures that should be, in a perfect world, be able to testify about investigating this case. There's only one little problem, as Zoe Rosenberg made very clear during the speaking tour she did, which we videotaped. She did like a national speaking tour, and we videotaped her stop here in Los Angeles. And she made a point of all those experts, they didn't pay any attention to what she was trying to tell them.
Something has to be done. I'm going to try at least one more time. So I compiled all of my evidence of animal cruelty, all of my evidence of disease, and I reported it to several law enforcement agencies in Sonoma County and at the state level. All I received in response was a very dismissive email from the Sonoma County District Attorney's Office. And months later, a very bizarre email from the United States Department of Agriculture saying that animal cruelty and disease is apparently not their area of expertise. The animal services officers who were once my heroes did not even grace me with a response. I didn't know what else to do but to continue to rescue animals myself. And so on June 13th, 2023, I personally rescued 4 chickens. I entered the slaughterhouse partially disguised as a worker. I approached the back of a transport truck that had just parked behind the slaughterhouse gates. I opened up 2 of the crates. Chickens were packed together so tightly they couldn't even turn around. They couldn't even stand up. And I removed 4 chickens from those crates. They were covered in scratches, bruises, small wounds. They were infested with coccidia parasites. Poppy had an injured toe and a respiratory infection. Some of the other birds had infected feet. Their feet were filled with pus. I got them veterinary care, and I shared their stories with the world, asking the public to join me in calling on the authorities to finally do something to address this horrific misconduct. And you might be surprised to learn that as far as that ever so consequential night goes, that's really pretty much it as far as my part in that night.
All right. So final thoughts given that. Annie, what say you to the fact that the authorities would be able to testify, but they didn't really listen to anything Zoe had to say? They didn't investigate.
Yeah, it just is unreasonable and unfair in so many levels, because they were not the person who actually decided, who actually went through the experience of seeing the cruelty, seeing the diseased animals. They didn't even take into consideration to take Zoe's this purpose for going in, taking the risk of trying to rescue. This is a rescue case, but above and beyond that, this is public health hazard as well. People need to understand. People worry about swine flu.
Okay, Annie, I'm going to jump in. I think you're making excellent points. I want to finish our round robin. So let's go to Michael Fujimori. Final thoughts.
Yeah, I am really surprised that that the judge would not allow Raven Deerbrook to be an expert witness. I've served on many juries where basically anybody that the defense or the either side could pay for could go on as an expert witness without any qualifications. So this part to me is really concerning because it's sort of like that if they don't have a title, official title, that they cannot be an expert witness, which is ridiculous because she has actually been inside the slaughterhouses and seen with her own eyes what happened.
Thank you so much. Final thought, Ellen Dent.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Michael and Annie that Raven Dearbrook is an expert. She is an investigator. She went in there and got firsthand footage that should be admitted into court, along with, the condemnation records and, all of the veterinary records for Poppy, Ivy, Aster, and Azalea. People need to know that this is the condition that these individuals, these chickens, arrived at the slaughterhouse. And, they need to be outraged that they would allow them to be in that condition, to be that sick. And, I hope that they make that connection. I can't say it enough, that I hope that the jury doesn't think of just the why and the what, but the who, that is on these trucks that, doesn't deserve to be there.
I want to thank our incredible panel today. Really appreciate it. I also want to invite Perdue-owned. That's the company that owns the slaughterhouse. They unequivocally deny animal cruelty. They have a website that talks about their high animal welfare standards, corporate.purduefarms.com/responsibility/animal-care. They say that they have the highest standards of animal care, give their birds space to roam, and a healthy, balanced diet, and that the animal care standards are pushed. The false claims about the animal care standards are pushed by an extreme group, DXC, with the ultimate goal of ending animal agriculture altogether and imposing a radical agenda. We invite Perdue or its subsidiary Petaluma Farms on anytime. We would love to dialogue with you. As we wrap up, I would like to say that I do believe this trial is making history. And I do agree with Dr. Silas Rao, an internet pioneer who spoke yesterday on our continuing live daily coverage, saying that this case will create a lot of other Zoe Rosenbergs. And he said, the more you try to push down something, the more it bubbles up like a volcano, ultimately to explode. I think even the judge is aware that what's really on trial here is industrialized animal agriculture more than any one facility. There's been similar trials involving former Baywatch star Alexandra Paul taking chickens from another major company. The conspiracy trial against Wayne Shung that involved yet another facility. And it's really the entire industrialized animal agriculture system, which is very new. Okay? 250 years ago, there were no factory farms. It's just a snap in the span of certainly geologic time and a snap in the span of human history that 140,000 chickens are killed every minute in industrialized conditions. That's what's really on trial. And this is an opportunity for everybody who shops to look in the mirror and say, what am I contributing to? So ultimately, this is a consumer issue. None of this would be happening if consumers weren't lining up to buy chickens. Chickens are the most consumed animal on the planet. If you look at the list, 75 billion plus were killed in 2022. Again, that's 140,000 chickens every minute globally. And it's probably even higher than that. So I think that this is food for thought. This entire trial is food for thought. And I also want to say that Unchained TV has made a commitment as a nonprofit streaming network covering the plant-based sustainable lifestyle to cover this trial every single day to its conclusion. But we need your help. We need you to share it out. Share this out on all your socials and join us on Thursday. Court is dark on Wednesday. Join us at Thursday at 1 o'clock for more team coverage of Zoe Rosenberg's chicken rescue.